Welcome to the University of Nottingham and the Department of Theology and Religious Studies. Welcome to another in our series Sacred Calendars, where we explore the feasts and festivals of different religious traditions. With me today, I have Mr. Shujahat Aslam. He's an imam here in Nottingham, and he often delivers the Friday sermon at the University of Nottingham's mosque. Shujahat, welcome.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a bit about the month of Ramadan? What is it, and how do Muslims, what religious obligations do Muslims undertake during this month?
Sure. Ramadan is the most significant and important of all the Islamic months of the year. Okay? And it's also a pillar of Islam. So really, to be considered a true Muslim, there are 5 pillars that one must do, and of those Ramadan is a pillar of Islam. So really every kind of Muslim above the age of puberty has to fast in the month of Ramadan. So in terms of when Ramadan starts, it's when the new moon is sighted to indicate the beginning of the month of Ramadan. And the main action that takes place that Ramadan is linked with is fasting. So first of all, why do we fast? The answer to that, many people say, are you fasting to lose weight? Or are you fasting to empathize with the poor? That's kind of a common question that we get asked. Actually, the reason we fast is described in a verse in the Quran where God says that fasting is prescribed upon you as it was prescribed upon the people before you, so that you may obtain taqwa. And taqwa, to explain, is kind of God consciousness. So the purpose of fasting during the month of Ramadan is to become conscious of God. Because if you're abstaining from kind of some of your base desires, it makes you think, it makes you reflect a lot more, and it makes you come closer to God, particularly because there's an atmosphere prevailing of kind of religious behavior. So the real reason why Muslims fast is to obtain taqwa, or consciousness of God. Okay? Alongside of that is an important point of building perseverance in oneself as well. Because if you're abstaining from food or drink, you have to kind of build up your strength, ability to say no, because obviously no one can see whether you're perhaps going to eat something and no one's watching you. So really it's about by persevering and being conscious of God. Other benefits that do arrive from fasting is that one does empathize with the poor. So you can feel how they're feeling to some extent. There's added benefits to the month of Ramadan, but really the primary reason is to obtain taqwa, or consciousness of God. So how long do we fast for? So Muslims have to fast from sunrise to sunset. And clearly that differs from country to country. So as an example, in the UK, I was just looking just last week as to what times they would start, because they're going to start approximately on the 1st of August this year. So at that time, fasting will begin in the UK approximately at 3:30 in the morning till 9 o'clock in the evening.
This is the break of dawn, not sunset, huh?
Yeah, right, dawn starts, yeah.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, right. So it's we're talking 18 hours of fasting here. So it's an extremely long day. And during that time, Muslims aren't allowed to eat or drink anything including water, and must abstain from any kind of sexual relationships with their marital partners. So it's a challenge. It's 18 hours of no food or drink, etc. And it does seem very hard, and it is hard for Muslims as well, particularly when you're coming up to Ramadan. But once you get into it, it does become easy. The system does adjust. So this is the main thing that Muslims have to do. And whilst fasting, clearly another key thing that they have to do is to be more conscious of God by reading more Quran as well. So Muslims are told that they obtain a lot more reward in Ramadan than you do outside of Ramadan. So to read Quran in Ramadan is more blessed than to read Quran outside of Ramadan, and other actions as well. The other key difference that Muslims experience in Ramadan is that they pray the extra prayer called Tarawih, or Tahajjud prayer. So once Muslims have completed their fast and opened their fast and had some food, which is traditionally done with dates, and then you have the final prayer of the day, which is the Isha, or the night prayer. So in the UK this year, if we open the fast kind of about 9 o'clock-ish, that Isha prayer will be about 10:30. Yeah, so it's very late. Muslim men in particular are encouraged to go to the mosque for the Isha prayer. Then after that, they are to pray kind of either 8 or 20 rakats more of prayer, so Tarawih prayer, so we can last approximately about an hour. So it's an extra prayer on top of the 5 compulsory prayers. It's not compulsory to pray them, but it's very highly recommended. And obviously people are going to the mosque, there's many more people in the mosque, much more kind of religious behavior taking place. But it's, as you can imagine, quite a tiring day, because you're having to wake up at 3 to eat something by 3:30, fast the day, and then pray extra prayers at night. So, but having said all of that, as you can imagine, there's a great deal of more religious environment taking place. So this is where that principle of taqwa comes into it. Okay? The Prophet also said that fasting is not just abstaining from food and drink, but it's also abstaining from indecent behavior and bad lying. So cheating, lying, indecent behavior, all of this is prohibited. Obviously for the Muslim, it should be prohibited throughout the year, but particularly in Ramadan as well. It's not just about a rigid regime of controlling food and drink, but it's about one's behaviors as well, one's tongue, what one sees, what one listens to. All of this is part of the fasting. So it's not just fasting of the stomach, it's kind of what you might say are higher levels of fasting. Okay? Now, the kind of climax of fasting, or the month of Ramadan, takes place in the last 10 nights. So Muslims are encouraged even more to do more worship in the last 10 nights of Ramadan. So the fasting is the same length, but more praying in the mosque, more reading of Quran. And the reason for this is that Muslims are told in a verse of Quran that this is the night in which in which the Quran was revealed. So there's a night in Ramadan which is like greater than, you might say, 1,000 months of worship. So there's a statement in the Quran that tells us that this night, so one night of worship is greater than 1,000 months. So Muslims are encouraged to seek this night out in the month of Ramadan. Some Muslims hold the view that it's the 27th night of Ramadan. It may well be the 27th night, it may be another one of the odd nights. But in that night, in those, particularly the final few nights, you'll see really Muslims congregating to the mosque to pray. And extra reward of praying in Kaaba in Mecca. So you see many people trying to do Umrah in Mecca, particularly in the last 10 nights of Ramadan. So really there's a spiritual buzz about Ramadan. Ramadan then concludes, it's normally 29 or 30 days long, and it's concluded with the sighting of the new moon, which marks that Eid al-Fitr has arrived. It can be quite challenging for all people concerned. Some people don't have to fast. Those that are too ill to fast, they don't have to fast, but they may well make up if their illness permits them to later on. Young children below the age of puberty don't have to fast. So there are certain concessions for people. Those that are travelling don't have to fast, but will have to make up for their fast later on. Can be quite challenging, particularly for children as well, obviously going to school. But again, children are very resilient. Once they get into it, you do see them kind of like the rest of the community, really persevering and persisting to please God in this most blessed of months.
Well, the way you describe it is very much a communal event. Can you say more about that, the communal aspect of the month?
Sure. I mean, there's a sense of community in the sense when you start your fast in the morning at kind of 3:30, generally the whole family will wake up to partake in a meal together. When you open the fast, often people will go to the mosque and open their fast there and then come home for the main meal. So again, it's communal in that sense. And finally, in the night prayer, the Taraweeh prayer, it really is prayed generally in the mosque. So it's really, you'll see many more people coming for that prayer than perhaps you might see at other times of the year.
Here in the UK, we're quite far north, but not so far north that it makes it impossible to follow this regime in the summer.
Sure.
But what about northern Scotland or even beyond the Arctic Circle?
Yeah.
How do Muslims fulfill this obligation?
I mean, it becomes, like you say, very challenging, because in certain places it's kind of daylight practically all day and night long, really, isn't it? So in those regions, Muslim scholars tend to give opinions. They might say that you will go by the nearest Muslim land, or they may have a similar opinion. So they'll not be exempt from fasting, although some allowance will be made so that their fasting takes place in the circumstances that are applicable that they're living in.
One more question that comes to my mind. Can you tell us how the Muslim breaks the fast each day? I think there's somehow dates involved here.
Yes.
And is this the case in the UK as well?
Yes. World over, we follow the prophetic tradition of dates first, and if there's no dates, then one should have water, followed by the main meal.
Okay. Thank you, Shujahat. It's very helpful. Thank you for being with us, and wish you well.
My pleasure. Thank you.